From the Windows, Doors, and More Studios, your one-stop shop for all your kitchen and bath needs. The Pat Miller Program. Whoa, 92.3 FM and 1190 AM. Depend on it.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome in on this Saturday edition of why do I do that? The Saturday edition of the Pat Miller Program. That's the only edition of the Pat Miller Program, okay? If you're looking for me on Tuesday and Friday, no. But the Saturday edition, that's where you find us every Saturday from noon to 3 as we go through the day. Today, we're going to look back a little bit on some of the goings-on that occurred back on Tuesday with the election primary here in the state of Indiana and how it affected. We're going to talk to somebody who was a winner of their race, somebody who did not win their race. So we'll talk to both of them and get their unique perspective about what happened. Marlin Stutzman and Grant Booker, and we're going to talk to both of them as we continue to go throughout the day. So hi there. Hey, remember, when we're on the air, in fact, even after we're gone, you can always reach me. If you would like to do it on texting, just go to your text line on your phone, text the word WOWO to 46862. That's WOWO to 46862. Text the word WOWO, then a space, and then your question or comment comes to us right here in the studio, or even after I'm gone. You can always email me, Pat Miller, all one word, no dots or dashes, patmiller@wowo.com. Just some people's views on racism is just a little bit different than mine, I guess. Seth Dillon said this: right now, we have, young black kids growing up in the Bronx who don't even know what the word computer is. Now, that came pouring out of the mouth of the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul. Well, then Seth said, Democrats are always trying to prove they aren't racist by talking about how dumb and incapable minorities are. If you think about it, isn't that the truth? Why is it racist if you say, well, you need to have your identification with you to vote and all that? They don't have their identifications. How are they supposed to do that? I don't know, just like every other person of every other race in their neighborhood or their town or their state or their country. Why is it that big of a large deal? Do you think that minorities are that incapable of doing what they need to do? I don't understand what the big holdup is here. Why it is that you want to put your feet on the neck of the minorities and continue to push and hold them down. Then, of course, you got a whole different kind of racism when Joe Biden said this week, can you imagine a kid 2 years old saying, Mom, don't take me across the Rio Grande. It's against the law. Give me a break. These have been model citizens. Okay, first of all, if you've got a 2-year-old, are they a model citizen? I would suggest to you, no. Model citizen, no. They're just doing what they need to do to get their next bit of food, their next bit of drink, not get slapped by mom or dad, or not getting beat up by their brothers and sisters, being able to have a place to sleep at night. That's what they want. It's not that they don't do anything against the law, and it's not that they're model citizens. What about their parents? Can you imagine a kid 2 years old saying, Mom, don't take me across the Rio Grande? No, but can you imagine a 2-year-old kid whose mom and dad say, we're going across, shut up and come on? Okay, now, are they as altruistically innocent as the president is trying to say that these 2-year-olds are? What about the parents of the 2-year-olds? I don't think we've had one 2-year-old, Mr. President, who sat up in their bed down in Guatemala or even in Mexico and said, Mommy, I think the time's come. I'm going to go to the border. Okay, son, we'll write us when you get there. Okay, Mommy. Is that how that goes on? What kind of a stupid position is it for a president or a senator or anybody to take the position of a kid being the one that we need to forgive? I'm willing to forgive every 2-year-old. I am. It's the mamas and dads that drag them across. It's the drug smugglers that push them across. That's who I'm upset with. The ones that are not innocent in all of this. The ones that have the bigger axe to grind. Then of course, we have White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, KJP, to those of us that just know her and love her as we should. She said, under this president's leadership, now before I say the next line, Are you sitting down? If you're driving, do me a favor, please. Pull over just for a moment, okay, so you don't wreck the car. Under this president's leadership, violent crime is at a nearly 50-year low. Do you not have working televisions in the White House? Can you not see anything that's going on? And then, of course, the predecessor to Karine Jean-Pierre, John Psaki, let me just circle back with you on that. She said this, maybe Donald Trump will go away. Maybe he'll go to jail. Maybe he will die. Not to be too morbid, but maybe. I mean, he's not a young man. Have you looked at the age of Donald Trump? Then have you looked at the age of the guy that you're backing for re-election, Joe Biden? How many stairs up or down from an aircraft has Donald Trump tripped and fallen on in the last 3 years? How many? How many times has he just stopped cold and come to a dead stop because he can't think of the next word or the next line that he wants to say? And you're going to tell me that you're not being morbid, saying, well, what if Donald Trump dies? Because if that happens, I'm not trying to be morbid, but it could happen. I mean, look at the man's age. Okay, yeah, just look at his age. This is what's wrong with us. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? If we're going to look at Joe Biden, and this is if you like Biden or his policies. Listen, it doesn't matter if you like his policies or not. Guess what? Joe Biden doesn't know his own policies. He's got his little catchphrases, and he knows it since all the time he was, Joltin' Joe back in Scranton, and when he used to ride the train every day across the bridge in Brooklyn, and then he rode across the bridge there, in Massachusetts, and he never did. Okay, I mean, he never did. He never did it in Maryland, where the bridge came down, and he said, well, I used to ride across that. No, you didn't. You never did. So why would you say something, Mr. President, to garner the attention of people just to garner their attention if you know it's not true? Because sooner or later, somebody is keeping an account of everything you've said. Everything you've said. And so, Mr. President, someday, somebody's going to come back and go, well, what about this that you said? And as soon as that happens, and they begin to display the fraud that you are and the understanding that you do not possess, well, then all your friends and minions will come screaming about how we're being totally unfair, and we're not only getting our elder statesman on the ground, but we're kicking him and punching him while he's down. Is that not what they're saying? I mean, is that not the position of what it is that they're doing? It's just amazing to me. Absolutely amazing to me. But that's where we are, and that's what we're going after, and that's the whole 9 yards. I want to go into this in the next section because I want to talk about the things not only that we protest, but why we protest them. Martin Luther King Jr., in all of the years of the civil rights movement, and I was very aware of the civil rights movement my junior high and senior high years, Martin Luther King was larger than life. Martin Luther King and other civil rights leaders never lowered the American flag and raised the flag of Black Power. Never. Not even once. I mean, they embraced America, and they wanted all the promises of America to be applied equally to everybody. People of his color, people of my color. This movement on our college campuses today, this is so full of hatred for the civilization that these students are blessed to reside in, but they can't see that because they're too busy trying to put forward the racism that they have. We'd better be very careful. More coming up straight ahead. Thanks for being with us on this Saturday. We'll be back with more right after this quick break. You're here on the Pat Miller Program right here on WOWO. That's WOWO 92.3 FM and 1190 AM.
This is the Pat Miller Program on WOWO 92.3 FM and 1190 AM and on the WOWO app.
Hey, I told you it wouldn't be very long, and here we are. We're back with you on this Saturday. Thank you very much for being with us. Back on Tuesday, if you've already forgotten, we had the Indiana primaries, and Democrats and Republicans selected their banner carriers going into this fall's election. I'm going to talk to one who won and one who did not win, two different perspectives on what happened on Tuesday night, and that's all coming up. We'll have Marlon Stutzman right after the news here at 12:30. And then at 1:30, going into segment 3 of the second hour, Grant Bucher, terrific young man. We're going to talk to Grant Bucher, and we'll do all that straight ahead. Your president said, no presidents had the run we've had in terms of creating jobs and bringing down inflation. It was 9% when I came to office. Well, it went to 9% after he came to office, and it has averaged 9.6 under this perpetual twister of truth. I'd say liar, but it just seems so disingenuous. Joe Biden also said it's a little bit like back in the 1840s and the great exodus from Ireland. Careful, Mr. President, you're treading on my heritage here. And the great exodus from Ireland, it's even a bigger influx now in terms of Hispanic voters or Hispanic citizens who want to become citizens. Okay, did you get that? There's two misnomers there that he said in one sentence. It's an even bigger influx now in terms of Hispanic voters. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't mean to say voters. Hispanic citizens who want to become citizens. So are you telling me they want to become citizens, but in your mind they already are? Is that what you're saying? Mr. President, let's all get on the same planet, shall we? Can we get in the same world? Can we look at things the same way and try to understand them from the same perspective? Because it doesn't seem like we're there. The President said some of my friends in the far right have criticized my investing in the American agenda. No, I differ with you on the American agenda and what you say that it is. What do you say that agenda is, Mr. President? Is it doing away with the ability for my house to have firearms to protect ourselves? Is it more inability for my house to have the ability to invest and to save some of my retirement income in a way that makes more sense to me? Is that what you're saying? Because my problem is not, being from the far right, criticizing the American agenda investment. It's criticizing your American agenda. What is that American agenda? Failed administrations, including my predecessor, which is Donald Trump, failed administrations, including my predecessor, failed to buy American. Is that right? Are you talking about like with petroleum? Are you talking about like with building supplies? Are you talking about like the things that kept more local businesses here in our country? Is that what you're saying, Mr. President? Because your numbers and my numbers don't work together. Now, to try to show us that he's meeting with the leading architects of the great economy in this world, he said, I've gone around the world, literally, not figuratively, meeting with the leading architects of AI. Clearly, they've still got some bugs to work out. Well, they've got some bugs to work out when it comes with you, Joe, because your AI doesn't seem to be functioning very well. You seem to be having a little bit of a problem, what you said, when you said it, and how you said it. Democratic National Convention spokesperson. And we need to start looking at some of these people more and more and more as we move to this summer, because where is this summer's Democratic National Convention? It's in Chicago, if that's where it ends up being. If that's where it ends up being. If you're like me, I remember Chicago 1968 and what a fiasco that was. We had rioters. We had people shooting at each other. We had people mauling each other. We had the police having to go into the convention center and shutting down portions of it, hauling people out, and not hauling out Republicans that were in there messing with their convention, hauling out Democrats. Because even Democrats looked at their Democrat leaders in 1968, and it looked to them that, in fact, that their vice president, who was running for president in 1968, wasn't going to be able to deliver the goods soon enough for them. Remember, the guy who would have been their campaign banner carrier, Bobby Kennedy, was assassinated in Los Angeles. And so their banner carrier became the vice president to Lyndon Johnson Hubert Humphrey. Now, Hubert Humphrey was not a bad guy per se. He was wildly liberal, and he was just wildly liberal, and he was very weak. He wouldn't take stands on things. So the people in that convention hall, even Democrats from the outside who came in said, this is our moment. We need to stew things up. We need to grab the pot and stir it. Well, when the country looks to Chicago this August, the unity and the excitement of Democrats is going to stand in stark contrast, I think, to the chaos and the extremism that's now brewing in the GOP. In the GOP, that's what Democratic National Convention spokesperson Matt Hill said. Well, Matt, keep wishing. Keep wishing. I don't think you're going to see it. I think a lot of things are going to move. For example, I think when you look very near Chicago, northern Indiana, yes, you have some Democratic friends in Indiana, but in northeastern Indiana, in fact, in the 2nd District and in the 3rd District, we have enjoyed some incredible conservatives, and we're going to enjoy even more conservatism coming in. And the guy that was our conservative president before your guy, he's coming back. And the guy that has been our conservative leader in the 3rd District, he is going to be back running for the Senate. And the guy who was the 3rd District representative before him, he's coming back to the 3rd District. And our governor will be one of the leading conservatives from the floor of the Senate. We're going to have him back in the State House. And as Michael Braun comes in and takes over as the leader of the government of the state of Indiana, people in Chicago, all they have to do is just look about 40 miles away to northern Indiana, and they're going to see there is a stark contrast to what was going on there between then and now. I just don't think we can justify everything that they say that's going to happen, and that's how it's going to work out, because I don't see it that way. I don't think that's going to work out. Look, the protests and the riots that we've had in the past, even the protests and the riots, just since the death of George Floyd, didn't make voters flock to Trump in the name of rallying law and order. Instead, the unrest simply made the Republican incumbent look weak, a leader who'd lost control of the situation. Well, now it's Biden's turn to appear powerless to unite the country. He will not even be able to unite his own side. The problem is, I think, for Biden, is that too many of the attacks on Trump, especially those based on his legal prosecutions, and some of that is his fault, but some of those prosecutions are minuscule and they should have died in court long ago, but the Democrats keep pushing them. Well, the problem is, a lot of the attacks on Trump feel besides the point compared to the bigger questions in the race. Are more people going to care that Trump has been convicted of some felonious bookkeeping related to a payment to a porn star 8 years ago, or that they think he can do a better job handling inflation? Look back 4 years ago. Things were better 4 years ago, were they not? Why were they better 4 years ago? Well, because Joe Biden was not in control. Donald Trump was in control. The most direct way for Joe Biden to improve his chances in November would for him to become a good president. Although it's unfair to place such unrealistic expectations on him at this juncture in his presidency and in his career. He almost cannot make himself a good president. And I think he's going to prove it now till November. Back with more. We'll have Marlon Stutzman with us right after the bottom of the hour. Stay tuned right here on Saturday on WOWO 92.3 FM and on 1190 AM. Hey, welcome back, everybody, on this Saturday. And as promised, he's right there on the Newsmaker line. Former and newly nominated Republican for the 3rd District in the congressional area here in Indiana, Marlon Stutzman. Congressman Stutzman, good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, good afternoon, Pat. Great to be with you on WOWO this afternoon.
I cannot even begin to imagine, and people knew, although I didn't make a big deal out of it on the air, but I was tangentially tied to your campaign. I wasn't a paid staffer or an official whatever. I wasn't even an unofficial whatever, but I was around you guys a lot. But I don't know how you were able to keep your composure Tuesday night as we were waiting for everything to happen. I left the GOP get-together down there at the GOP headquarters, and I made my way over to your party, watching everything come in. And you just sat there kind of looking at the screen that I was looking at, and numbers would move. And you kind of surprised me. You were just like some other people that I've known in the past. Well, for example, Mark Souder. Mark Souder could tell me exactly what precinct in what area, that if this one goes that way, that'll go this way. And you knew exactly, I mean, some people, your humble interrogator here included, were a little beside themselves thinking, is this going to get away from us? But you were fairly confident. And then there were a few areas that came in, and you knew at some point it's going to be almost impossible for us not to win it. Was that pretty much what was going on with you?
Yeah, it was. And I tell you, I love election night, better than Christmas morning. And that's what's probably, some people would say you're really a strange guy. But I always like numbers. And I like watching how, things take shape and, studying the district. And we had a really good plan. We had, a great group of staff and volunteers that helped us on our campaign, and we knew where we were strong, we knew where we were weak, and so as those things come in throughout the night, you like to see how that matches up with what you had thought things would, how they would shape up. And there were a couple of surprises, and there were a couple of things that just went exactly the way we thought they would. And that's from looking at previous elections, and once you're around it, you have a history, you can kind of where the trends are, but there were a couple of surprises, and so when those surprises came in, you start thinking, oh boy, we better we better be strong in our other places that we hope that don't go sideways on us, and so there was a little moment around probably 7:30 that I got a little nervous, but I tried not to show it. But, as the numbers kept coming in, I felt more and more confident as the night went on. Yeah,
well, and it did turn out. So allow me to say it this way. Congratulations to you on a campaign well run and on an outcome that I know that you're rather happy with.
Yes, thank you very much. But I'd also commend my competitors as well. Every one of them ran great races. It's it's an experience that all of them will always remember. And I always encourage people to run for office because it is a neat experience. Nobody likes to lose. I've lost a time or two times at least, and it's not any fun. But at the same time, you always learn lessons from it, and God always has. I believe God has a plan for each of us, and that's where I always wanted to be, is in the center of His will. But as we get out there and compete with each other, we make each other better as candidates, and I think that every one of them would say the same thing. And obviously, there's disappointment on the other sides, but I'm very grateful and humbled for the opportunity to serve Northeast Indiana again in Congress.
Let me dig into the weeds here with you a little bit, Marlon. And I haven't told Marlon anything that we're going to cover, but let me just do this. I remember back in 2016 when you were running for the Senate, and at that time, Mitch McConnell and his deep middle to left pockets and some friends of his had decided they didn't want, I think the words used, I don't want another Ted Cruz in my Senate. I don't think that they wanted a huge amount of conservatism on the Senate floor. Well, they're going to get that with Jim Banks, by the way. But the thing Tuesday started to feel like the same thing to me. Like there were some parties, some donors, some PACs that didn't want you around because of your known ability to be a voice for conservatism. Were you sensing that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, that's the thing. These fights for position, they take place a lot of times behind closed doors. But this one here, they decided to bring it to the district and tried to block me from, being behind those closed doors like I was before. And so they decided with their billionaire friends that they're going to spend millions of dollars trashing me to try to create doubt, try to create, the uncertainty for voters that, hey, maybe Marlin isn't that guy that we thought that he was. And, they did it in 2016 and it worked. They tried it again in 2024 and thankfully it didn't work. And I can't tell you, Pat, how much I appreciate every person who voted for me, that they saw through those, the twisted truth. They saw through that. And I think it's unfortunate that the super PACs came into the 3rd District in Indiana the way that they did. And obviously you had 2 super PACs that came in beating me up. Well, then, I have supporters on the conservative side that said, hey, if they're going to be beating up on Marlin, we're going to go in and defend them. And so that's how this all shaped up. And the super PACs have a lot of money at their disposal, and they also don't take into consideration, the after effects. They're looking to go in to win, and they play rough ball.
Yeah, one of the things that surprised me, I heard it was either earlier today or yesterday on our airwaves at WOWO that someone was on, and they were trying to make a claim to the fact that what kept everything in such an uproar in the 3rd District and what kept Tim Smith from winning was the fact that Marlin Stutzman and his PACs went after his enemies so ruthlessly. Well, now, let me just throw it out there. This is my perspective, and I think you and I both know my perspective can be pretty warped sometimes. It seemed to me you were on the receiving end of that PAC stuff, and only then you were defended by a PAC who happened to be one of the country's leading PACs in saying, I don't know whose dope you're smoking, but if you want a conservative, that's Marlin. And if you're a conservative too, the last thing that you need to be doing is beating him up. And both of those who seem to use those PACs that came after you were not in first place.
Right. No, and that's exactly right. I mean, Winning for Women, if you go on their website, you'll see they called me a far-right conservative, and they were that was kind of a derogatory statement. But then, their mail pieces try to tie me with Joe Biden. So you can see the inconsistency in who they really are. They proclaim themselves to be a center-right organization supporting primarily women for office, which I have no problem with that, but you have to do some homework on who, and a lot of people did. Pat, I had a lot of people tell me, when I got these mailers, I saw the disclaimer. I didn't know who they were necessarily supporting, but I went and looked and saw that, oh, okay, that's who they are. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate people doing their homework on these organizations, because it is. And I predicted this back in the first part of April, that dark money was going to come into this race to try to keep me from, winning, and it did. And so and this is where conservatives for years didn't have the same ability to go support other conservatives. The moderate liberal groups had the super PACs first. Well, then conservatives saw what was happening. It's like conservatives had to band together to defend their own, and that's where Club for Growth came from. David McIntosh is from Indiana. He was raised in Kendallville.
Right.
He was a congressman from Indiana, and, he was the Mike Pence district area. And then also he ran for governor in 2000. But, David McIntosh is the CEO for Club for Growth, and so he knows Indiana politics very well. And he also knew that I was a strong conservative when I was in Congress before, and so he said it was a no-brainer for them to come in and defend me. And a lot of people say, well, everybody, we all say, oh, we hate negative campaigning, but the thing is, it works, and that's why D.C. politics continues to do it, because it just draws attention to to the fight. We all tend to watch the fight that's going on the playground rather than watching the kids that are playing nice together over in the sandbox.
As we watch the campaign, and you and I have not even talked directly about this, but I knew you. I know Tim Smith. I know Wendy Davis. I know Andy Zay to somewhat of a lesser degree. But Whalen, Felker, Kenworthy, I don't really know that much. And Grant Booker, I didn't know that much. But I must tell you, between you and me, I thought the person with the cleanest campaign who was not involved in throwing mud at you or anybody else for that matter was Grant Booker. And I was astounded but understandable how he actually took the lead in 2 counties.
Yeah, and I tell you, I respect each one of those folks who all ran. I enjoyed getting to know them all. Of course, when negative ads start flying, then it's a little different feeling. Now we're on the basketball court and the game is tied, and we're all playing to win, and so there's a seriousness a tone that's taken by the candidates, but. I enjoyed Mike Felker. I enjoyed John Kenworthy. He's got a lot of knowledge about how the process works with his experience. And, of course, Wendy and Tim are very successful in their own right. And but Grant Booker, he was just a great guy, great family. And I actually served in the Indiana State House with his father-in-law, Mike Ripley, from Adams County. And so Grant is very well known and respected in both Wells and Adams County. And those were 2 of the surprises that as I talked about earlier, some surprises, how well he did there.
Yeah.
And that just says a lot to his testimony and to his reputation, that people that know him really admire him. And so there's a lot that every person can take away from this election that helps us all understand ourselves better and where we need to work harder and do better and be a better person.
People need to stay tuned, Marlon, because later on in this program today, Grant Booker is going to be on the air with me, and I want to talk to him about. I mean, I know that there's a certain level of disappointment in not winning, but at the same time, I know that he realized he wasn't going to win the whole seat, probably a month out. But yet he stayed in there, and I felt like ran the race the right way, and I think that's why he was rewarded in those 2 counties. So what's next?
Yeah,
I mean,
I would say this, Pat.
Yeah.
I would say this real quick, because back in 2010 when I ran for the U.S. Senate seat, I eventually lost to Senator Dan Coates in 2010 in that primary. I came in second, and even though I lost, I won. And I think that's what Grant should be looking at.
Yeah.
And Andy Zay as well. Andy ran a great campaign as well.
he did.
And never kind of got into the mix with the 3 that finished in the top. But they both ran great campaigns. And I would say, even though they lost, they really did win. And there's a lot of opportunity for Grant and for Andy in different capacities than serving in Congress. And so that's one of the neat things that comes out of these races is that even though it didn't come out on the top, it definitely still advances your ability to push the conservative message and cause.
6 months from now, it's going to be the general election. Talk to me about, as best you know, the one that you're up against for the Democrats at that time, and what do you think the race going forward for you to be ready for November? What does that look like?
Well, it's going to this is a very Republican district. I don't take that for granted at all. We've got a great team that's going to continue to work hard through the November election. But a lot of the attention will now shift to the presidential race, and I think that's where you're going to see the turnout come from, and that people are very concerned about the direction that Washington, D.C. is going. And the fact that Pat, it's unbelievable the amount of spending that's taking place right now. I get a text message from Congressman David Schweikert from Arizona, a former colleague and friend, and soon-to-be colleague again, and he sends out a text message on how much debt the country takes on a daily basis. And the federal government is taking over $3 trillion of debt on in the last 365 days. And so the irresponsible leadership that we have in Washington is it's atrocious and it's sad. And I think that's where people feel a sense of hopelessness is anybody going to try to get the federal government under control and back on track to serve the American people? And so I think a lot of the attention is going to turn onto the presidential election, and that'll definitely give us, coattails to follow as well.
Sure.
That'll help Senator soon-to-be Senator Banks, Jim Banks, and myself and others. So it should be a very strong turnout for Republicans in November, just due to the presidential race. And with Donald Trump on the top of the ticket, he's going to bring a lot of folks out to the polls. And so we need to do our best to make sure that Republicans get out to vote for Trump as well. And I know there's people that, are very hesitant to vote for Trump again, but I'm telling you, the difference, and I'm all in. I like where Trump has taken, what he did before on policy, but what Joe Biden is doing to our country right now has to be stopped. And Donald Trump is the person that can stop it and also start fixing problems, and not just stopping Biden. He can actually start fixing the problems with the help of strong leaders in Congress, and I hope to do that.
That's exactly right. Congressman, former and next, congratulations to you again. Best of luck, and I'm sure we'll see each other out on the campaign trail. But for what happened this week, congratulations to you, sir, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you, Pat, for your help, and I appreciate all that you do for the conservative cause, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
And our thanks to Marlon for being with us today. And as I said, stay tuned. Later in this program, Grant Booker, who was also a candidate for 3rd District. All this coming up straight ahead here on WOWO 92.3 FM and 1190 AM.
This is the Pat Miller Program on WOWO 92.3 FM and 1190 AM and at WOWO.com.
Hey, welcome back. Last little bit of time between here and the top of the hour. Then we'll join Fox News and be back with hour number 2. Don't forget, halfway through the next hour at the 1:30 portion, Grant Booker, who was also a candidate for Congress alongside of Marlon Stutzman that we just heard. And Grant Booker will be with us on our Newsmaker line, and we will find out what he took away from all of this. Some things I think that we need to look at. Biden says he wants Israel to be more careful and more precise. More careful and more precise in what it is that they do and how they do it relative to their functioning of their war against Hamas. But he, Joe Biden, is withholding precision-guided munitions that would actually reduce civilian casualties. The very arms that Biden says, well, as long as you're not going to go into this ceasefire absolutely the way I want you to do it, we're going to withhold this, this, and this. Well, the problem with that is the this, and this that he withholds are the this, and this that could actually allow them to go in with precision and to go after the Hamas leaders that they want to go after, as opposed to having to do carpetbagging and going in there and just slaughtering whole sections of Gaza and killing a lot of undeserving people because our president is withholding precision-guided munitions. You need to come out and say what it is that you want to say, sir. I mean, that really is what you have to do, Mr. President. You need to go in and stop hamstringing everybody, all of them, and coming out and trying to paint your position as one that's there to protect those people. In the next hour, I want to talk to you about some of the goings-on at our college campuses, Columbia City. Forgive me, friends over there to the west. No, Columbia University and some others. We're going to talk about a theologian, Gresham Machen, and what his thoughts were. You say, well, what does that have to do with it? This particular theologian died in 1937. But some of the things that he shares and says to us incredibly speak very well into where we are now. Back with more. Here we go. We're going to the top of the hour. Here comes the news, and right after that, I'll be with you just the other side. People having thoughts now and in the past. Here on WOWO 92.3 FM, 1190 AM.
Podcasts by Federated Media.